The Atlanta Braves declined their club option on veteran catcher Travis d'Arnaud yesterday. Was that the right move? Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Tuesday, November 5th. Your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. He's Christian Rauh, Christian S. Rauh, R-A-U-H on the Twitter machine. You can follow the show on Twitter, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all of our written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Substack, because this is both a podcast and a newsletter. And Christian, a lot of stuff happened yesterday. Free agency's officially started, so you can sign outside free agents. Where are all the signings, Alex Anthopoulos? But I want to talk about Max Fried getting his qualifying offer and what happens next. I want to talk about the shocking news of Joe Jiménez probably missing all of next year for knee surgery. But the biggest thing to happen yesterday in Braves country was the Atlanta Braves declined the $8 million club option of catcher Travis d'Arnaud. And so he is now a free agent. And this was unexpected, right? We knew they were going to decline the club option for Luke Jackson. $7 million. They paid him $2 million to go away, right? We knew they were going to pick up Marcell Ozuna at $16 million because that was a $2 million discount on what he did last year. But I don't think we saw d'Arnaud getting declined. And there was some reporting that they were open to bringing him back, just not for $8 million. Do we really think that this was financially motivated, or do we think there's other factors at play here for Atlanta?
Yeah, I think both can be true. I think that there were some financial factors for sure. We can't rule out what AA wants to do this offseason. He's already cut payroll a little bit when you look at how he did Bummer's deal, and we talked about it yesterday with the other deals there with Lopez as well.
And then trading Soler.
And trading Soler. Yeah, absolutely. Can't forget about that one. If he can bring back d'Arnaud for a cheaper than $8 million deal, because knowing that he's going to platoon for the foreseeable future with Sean Murphy, then that would be a great deal. And that would be a win for the Atlanta Braves. I know Drake Baldwin's sitting in the wings, but we've talked about it on this show. And I think Braves fans can obviously see the writing on the wall that young catchers don't really go with this system. At least it hasn't been in the past. We're going to see if we get that this year with Drake Baldwin. But when it comes to d'Arnaud, I wonder if it has anything to do with his age as well. You have to think about that right off the bat, Lindsay. Is he planning on retiring? If so, I saw things on social media that could potentially maybe pop into the Braves coaching roles. That could be a potential fit for him as well. We saw that with some former catchers in the past. It was Tyler Flowers, I think, was one of those.
Tyler Flowers, when he retired, he joined as I believe he's either a catching consultant or he's a special assistant to the general manager, or in this case, Alex Anthopoulos, working on catching different work and things like that. So yeah, like he joined the front office almost immediately when he retired, and is still involved today.
Yeah, and I personally think d'Arnaud still can play. So I think that it'd be great to have him back. But if he can get him on a discount deal, then that would be outstanding. But I do think there's going to be some teams looking for a veteran catcher. And there's a couple teams in the National League that I could name right off the bat that I think would probably give him $8 million next year. So I don't know how that is.
I've already heard from both Cubs and Angels fans who want d'Arnaud to come in for different reasons. The Angels obviously have Logan O'Hoppe as their young future of the position, but they want to get him some veteran mentorship. Cubs fans, they have some young players. None of them have really worked out yet. None of them are hitting. So they think d'Arnaud would be a good fit to come in, especially because they also want Max Fried. And Fried was like the only starter for Atlanta last year that did better pitching to Travis d'Arnaud than to Sean Murphy. But when it comes to d'Arnaud, hit 238, 15 homers, 48 runs, 99 starts. He became the starter when Murphy was out, right? Trump was the backup there. And then down the stretch when Murphy was in that slump, they started sharing time a little heavy. That's why he got 99 games. But the big thing for Travis d'Arnaud is after you lost in consecutive off seasons, Freddie Freeman and Dansby Swanson, Travis d'Arnaud was really your veteran leader in the clubhouse, right? He stepped into a large role as far as being the leadership voice in the clubhouse. I've heard AA say things before about going to talk to Travis d'Arnaud about certain things We don't know if they were just moves or ideas or what, but like consulting with AA and with SNIT on different things, the game planning meetings that they had, catching coach Sal Fasano, who is now gone, and Travis d'Arnaud were both big parts of those. As I understand, Travis d'Arnaud led those meetings, not Fasano, not Sean Murphy, not pitching coach Rick Kranitz. Travis d'Arnaud led the pregame game planning meetings that they had. And I do think Sean Murphy needs needs more starts. I did a catcher show. I think you were out a week or two ago talking about Sean Murphy needs to start 4 or 5 games a week, right? I think if Chadwick Tromp's his backup, I think you can do that. You have questions if there's an injury about Tromp playing every day. I think Drake Baldwin would be a guy that he might break camp with the team. I will remind everybody who's just penciled him into a large role. I do want to remind folks this team does not play a lot of young catchers, like you said. And I actually pulled the quote from that now infamous postseason press conference where AA talked about he talked about bringing all the coaches back and they left. He talked about picking up Travis d'Arnaud's option and they left. So grain of salt here. But I want to play you the clip of what AA said about Drake Baldwin playing in 2025.
I view the young, in my time in the game, the young catching position, to me, it's like breaking in a glove, right? It's not, there's just so much more to it with the information. Yeah, you can look at the numbers and everything else, but there is so much thrown at these guys with the game planning, the game calling, all beyond the fact that offensively and everything else, that I don't think you ever go wrong at that position getting more time.
So based on what we just heard right there and what the track record's been so far this offseason, Drake Baldwin's going to play 162 games for the Braves, right?
I can absolutely see. I'm going to handicap. I'm not putting you on the spot because I didn't tell you I was doing this. I'm going to handicap the 3 scenarios of Travis d'Arnaud signs for cheaper, Chadwick Tromp's the backup, Drake Baldwin's the backup. And I'm going to say I think the most likely outcome here is Travis d'Arnaud comes back at a lower salary for 2025. I think the second most likely outcome is Sean Murphy plays 5 games a week, Chadwick Tromp catches 1 or 2, and Baldwin's in AAA. And I think the third most likely outcome of the 3 is Drake Baldwin comes up and is the opening day backup at catcher in 2025. Like, it is very clear that they want him to get as much time as humanly possible in the minors, leading a pitching staff, doing the game calling, doing the game planning, all of those things before they give him an opportunity. And people who are just jumping on the Drake Baldwin bandwagon right away, I really think you need to wait, because I feel like they're going to go with a veteran backup behind Murphy, whether it's d'Arnaud or it's Tromp, before they go with Drake Baldwin as the guy or as the main backup in 2025.
Boy, but is it fun to watch him swing a bat, though, Lindsay?
Golly.
It is very fun to watch Drake Baldwin swing a baseball bat. And if he does get a chance up there, that is why he will break camp. It'll be there might be a defensive worry and a little bit because he's a younger catcher, but he'll be able to swing that baseball.
A lefty hitting catcher with some thump. I wrote about this over the weekend on the Substack. Again, bravestoday.com. His average 90th percentile exit velo is right up there with JT Realmuto, who's a pretty decently slugging catcher. And yes, he hits too many ground balls, but like, this kid's legitimately a plus power hitter and a lefty catcher. And if you look at next year's roster, as of now, your only lefty position players look to be Matt Olson, Michael Harris, and then obviously switch hitter Ozzie Albies. Jared Kelenic may be the left fielder. We don't know if they make a move there. If so, you would have another lefty. But if Kelenic, let's say Kelenic is on the bench, you'd have potentially maybe only 3 lefties in your lineup. And so being able to add another lefty bat from time to time would be really nice. I think the big thing here is we don't expect them to sign some other catcher in free agency, right? Like, it's going to be, it feels like it's Travis d'Arnaud or bust. The question's going to be, do they bring him back, or does he get tired of waiting and go somewhere else? Because it feels Atlanta signs guys early in free agency and then they wait until February or March. So if there's not a signing in the next week or two, it feels like you're going to have to wait on Travis d'Arnaud until right before spring training.
Yeah, and is that one of those positions where you want to get your guy in a lot quicker than later? Because especially if he goes to a new team, he's going to want to get involved with that new pitching staff, get that rapport.
You
A
don't do
guy
a lot
like
of off-season workouts in baseball like you do in football and stuff. I think as long as you have them in time to report when pitchers and catchers report, I think you're probably okay. I don't think you do a lot of, if you bring the guy in December, I don't really think you get a lot of meeting with those catchers. You get meeting with the team, right? Like with the other, like with the staff. I don't think you get a lot of work in with the other pitchers until February because of how baseball doesn't do a lot of organized offseason workouts.
That's a good point. That's a good point. But the way that we've seen d'Arnaud the last few seasons and how he has seemed to want to get his hand involved in the coaching portions and the mentoring of some of the younger players, it might be one of his priorities, trying to get involved a little earlier. But who knows? You're right. But it's a good point you made.
Yeah. Okay. So all of these moves, so whether it's trading Jorge Soler, declining the d'Arnaud and Jackson option, the new deals for Lopez and Bummer, as of right now, accounting for Jackson's buyout, you freed up about $33 million in salary from, or you freed up about $33 million in salary. And that doesn't count, obviously, expiring deals. Freed was $15 million. Morton was 20. Some of that's offset by Sale being picked up. But here, this $33 million that's free now, they've said they expect payroll to go up this year. What do we think he's saving that for? I did not warn you about this. I'm putting you on the spot, I know. But what's the big signing we think Atlanta is going to make? Because it feels like there's one major free agent signing. It's not a top of the market one, but there's a major free agent signing every offseason. Whether it's Ronald Lopez, whether it's double dipping in the relievers, whether it's they brought in Morton one offseason. What do we think that $33 million is being freed up for that's not on the current roster right now?
It's not Juan Soto, okay? It's not going to be that.
It's not Juan Soto.
It would be wild, but I don't think that
you Junior and Wright. My gosh,
I think it's going to be a shortstop, Lindsay, and it's either going to be Willy Adames or Ha-Seong Kim, but I think it's going to be a shortstop, and I think that when it comes to Adames, they're going to have to spend obviously a lot more, but you know what you're going to get production wise. You're probably going to have to compete with the Los Angeles Dodgers to get that one to happen as well. But when you look at this roster and how it's set up, and we've talked about it over and over again, I think that shortstop would be a game changer for this Braves in 2025. And then I also do think that they're still going to go ahead and add some more pitching. And I wouldn't be shocked if they're in on some of these players, obviously trying to bring Max Fried back. I know a lot of people would love to bring him back, but if not, there's some players that are around his talent level that I wouldn't be shocked to see the Braves try and compete to get one of them as well. But if I'm a betting man, I'm saying that shortstop is the number one priority that Alex is looking at moving into this offseason. And that's one of the biggest reasons why he's freeing up money for Adames or for Kim. I think both would fit very well in this Braves organization.
Yeah. Tim Britton of The Athletic is one of the best at the contract predictions, using comps, using things like that. He has Adames at 6 years, 150, which is honestly cheaper than I expected. That's $25 million a year. He has Ha-Seong Kim at 2 years and $36 million as a second tier shortstop. So $18 million a year. You can obviously afford Kim. If Adames actually is only 25 a year, you can afford that as well. Now, I feel like he's going to get more. It's going to be that thing because there's just so few shortstops available this year. That's less than what Dansby Swanson got. Dansby got 7 for 177, which is $26 million a year, or the equivalent of $26 million a year. And there was 4 top tier shortstops on the market that offseason. Adames is it. I feel like he'll get more than 25, but $25 million a year for Willy Adames is not out of the question for Atlanta to fit on their payroll. The question then just becomes, how long do you think he can stick at shortstop before you have to move him into second base? And obviously you would keep Orlando Arcia as a backup for 2 seasons at $2 million a piece. It's probably the best case scenario, but it feels like shortstop's going to be the move. I say that, watch them go sign Teoscar Hernandez to a 6-year deal for left field or something nuts. But it feels like if there's any position where I think you're going to spend the money on the shortstop, It feels like shortstop is that, and you might fill left field either with Ramon Laureano or a trade.
Yeah, and that seems like that would be the case as well. I don't know if I've put my take out here, but if I had the sticks and I'm playing general manager of the Braves, although Willy Adames for $25 million a year would be great, and I'm sure he would be an amazing piece moving forward, I would lean towards Kim because you could get him on a good value. Also, he can play multiple positions, something that wouldn't with the injuries of the Braves all last season that could come
Very
in handy.
defensively
There's no
versatile.
doubt about that.
He can play every infield position, and I don't think
Yeah.
Adames has played a lot of third base.
And with Adames, if you sign Adames, you are probably done for the year. That is probably your big present under the tree. It's the big one. That's the PlayStation. That's
And he
the
got a
computer,
qualifying
that's
offer.
whatever.
You lose a draft pick.
But if you get Kim, you can also go chase after another left fielder. You can go chase after a
A
pitcher
starter.
and still, yeah, and that can be interesting to see. So that's where I would go if I had the sticks, but we'll see what happens.
Yep. And unfortunately, there's other needs for Atlanta that have now come up. We'll get to those in just a minute. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Encase Cards. This is a custom card manufacturer. Encase Cards takes your source photos of, in my case, it was youth sports participants, right? It was my kids play youth sports. My son plays t-ball. My daughter plays soccer. And the artists of Encase Cards personalized these for my kids. They added their positions, some of their stats, the team name, the number, the city, say all that good stuff. And they print it on high quality cardstock, slab it, and ship it to you as a keepsake. So go check them out, ncasecards.com. That's NCASC cards.com. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby, Christian Rauh breaking down all of the last minute updates before free agency. We got two other significant bits of news here for the Atlanta Braves. The first one, this is actually backwards order. I think this one broke later in the day, but Joe Jiménez, primary setup man, had surgery on October 29th to repair cartilage damage in his left knee. He apparently injured the knee sometime during the season. We don't know when. He was reevaluated in the offseason. They said, yeah, we think you're going to need surgery. They didn't realize how bad it was until Dr. Brian Cole in Chicago actually was in there. So the timeline we've been told is 8 to 12 months. If it's 8 months, that is late June or early July when he is cleared to return to pitching. That does not count the time for a throwing progression and a rehab assignment before he returns. If it's a full 12 months, he's likely out for the entire season. AJ Minter is a free agent, lefty there. Joe Jiménez is now, we're going to assume, I think it's safe to assume, out for most, if not all of 2025. How important is it now to go find at least one reliever in free agency?
Yeah, I think it's important. Do you think it's important that it has to be another righty, or do you think that doesn't matter when it comes to replacing Jimenez?
So right now, your lefties are Aaron Bummer, and we assume Dylan Lee is going to be tendered. So Dylan Lee, you'd have two lefties. Angel Perdomo is due back at some point in time earlier in the year. Similar situation to Strider. We don't have an exact timeline. He's a lefty as well. I do think if you can find a lefty, then let's do that just so you're going to have 8 bullpen guys. There's no harm in having 3 or 4 lefties and 4 or 5 righties. I don't think you have to find a righty. Those are more common. If you can find a lefty that works out, do it. But I just think the big thing here is you just have to find a high quality, like a towards the back end guy. Because right now your primary setup man is Pierce Johnson.
Like a former Baltimore Oriole left-handed reliever that should have had a player option picked up but didn't.
You are a Danny Coulombe guy. You like Danny Coulombe.
Huge.
I will 100% give that one to you. I was surprised they didn't want to pay $4 million for him. He's a guy. I've seen Braves fans asking for Tanner Scott. He's going to be pretty expensive, but as a lefty, he is the guy you could maybe see the deal for if they do a Kim over an Adames, right? I do think another factor, we talked about this in the mailbag yesterday, Raisel Iglesias is a free agent after 2025. So it feels like if you can find a guy who can step into your closing role, that's pretty important. simply because Iglesias could walk after next year. I do think either way, you got to find somebody. I don't care ahead of this. You got to find somebody who you trust in the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning.
Yeah, there's a couple options I could think of right off the bat. That'd be some good pieces. I know we talked about a couple in yesterday's show, but with the new options that happened and new things that were declined, actually a couple of interesting relievers hit waivers as well. I'm going to have to put a new article out on bravestoday.com and talk about some potential relief pieces to replace Jimenez, because I do think there are a few. But I will say this, Danny Colon will be in that piece.
Yeah.
I'm so shocked that the Orioles didn't re-sign him on a player option. He had
$4 million.
Yeah, and he had great numbers in 2023. Now, he was injured in 2024, but in that small sample size, he was still effective. Let me just give you just a little bit of taste of this, Lindsay.
Okay.
In 20 innings, he only had, I think, 26 innings last year, but in at least 20 innings pitched out of all MLB pitchers last season, he was the 7th lowest among closers in baseball with a 147 opponent batting average. Put that into perspective, Manuel Clase was 8th of the Cleveland Guardians. So it's a really interesting thing to put into perspective why the Orioles didn't do so. 35 years old, you can probably get him on a pretty good value knowing what Alex can do. And I think he'd be a nice fit to put it with Aaron Bummer, to put with, I think Hernandez is also going to have a big step up.
Hernandez has to be a lock in there now.
Yep. I think it's going to be I think he'd be a really nice fit, but we're going to have to put something out on Braves Today this week to talk about some reliever options.
Absolutely. And then the other big news also with the pitching, the Atlanta Braves have officially given the qualifying offer to Max Fried, $21.05 million. He has until 4 p.m. on November 19th to accept or decline it. He is virtually a lock to decline it. So what that means is Atlanta will get a draft pick after the 4th round if he declines it. It is that far back because the Braves pay into the luxury tax. It was higher when they got one for Dansby, when they got one for Freddie Freeman. It would be a 4th round one there. So he'll turn it down. This will be offset by Atlanta losing a pick if they sign a Willy Adames. So something to keep in mind there. As far as I know, Ha-Seong Kim did not get a qualifying offer. And now that you have these other needs here, I'm starting to think it might be better to, instead of Adames, to get a Kim and hope that his offense can improve a little bit closer to what the Braves want to see from a power perspective, and have money to maybe add a starter, have money to maybe add a top tier reliever. I do think that Grant Holmes, I want to see him in the rotation. I do think he's going to be, I think the most valuable role for him now is going to be that long reliever in the pen who can make a spot start here and there, who can go 3 or 4 innings if a dude gets knocked out early. And you're going to need somebody in the rotation to step up, or a potential rotation guy to step up, so that you can leave Grant Holmes in the bullpen, because you're losing so much experience with Minter and Jimenez now not being part of it. You'll have Iglesias, you'll have Johnson, Bummer, Lee, Isabel Hernandez. We're expecting to be up there. He only pitched 18 innings in the majors last year. And then after that, Angel Perdomo, you haven't seen him in Atlanta yet, coming back from injury. Huascar has not pitched in multiple seasons. You don't have as many bullpen options as it looked like you had a week ago. We thought you needed to add someone. Now you almost definitely need to add someone, whether it's bringing back AJ Minter, which I still think is a possibility, or adding somebody else, again, for the back end who can be prepared to step into the Raisel Iglesias role once he potentially moves on.
Yeah, one big name's not going to do it this offseason. As much as an exciting it is of a free agent with some of those really big names, a big name is not going to do it for the Braves if they want to make that next step forward to continue their contending ship. Having people back from injuries is obviously going to help Lindsay. There's no doubt about that. And we have to also remember that at the beginning of last season, with with the entire team being healthy, they were projected to win 100 games. Now, if you go ahead and add the missing pieces that we found out that there were some holes because of injuries or because of some lack of performance from this past season, if you fill those holes instead of getting one big player, I think you can go right back into that conversation of saying this is a 100-win team in 2025.
Yeah, all of the changes for the Braves we're talking about here are, I'm not going to say on the margins, but they're small parts of the 2025 roster, right? Whoever your left fielder is, unless you break the bank for somebody, is probably batting in the bottom third. Whoever your shortstop is probably batting in the bottom third of the order, right? Anybody for your rotation is probably your number 4 or number 5, right? Behind Sale, behind Lopez, behind Strider when he's back, behind Schwellenbach. And I think the advantage and I think Braves fans need to remember that no one signing this offseason is going to make or break the 2025 roster. It's entirely possible that all the signings put together don't make or break the 2025 roster in the 2025 season, because at the end of the day, this team is only going to go as far as Austin Riley and Matt Olson and Ronald Acuna Jr. and Michael Harris and Sean Murphy and those guys take them. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of ways, a lot of directions AA can go here. But at the end of the day, none of these are going to be massively impactful moves, with the exception of Juan Soto. And I think we all understand Atlanta's not going to pay $40 million a year for Juan Soto. So have perspective as we get farther into free agency.
Alex has not talked about Juan Soto at all, so maybe he is going to sign Juan Soto based on all the ways he's had the conversations all this offseason. I want to say the word lie, but he hasn't been as truthful as we thought he was going to be with some of those past things. So maybe that will happen. I will say this: we're not getting Juan Soto.
Yeah, I do want to clarify here. In that press conference, A did point out more than once that it was right after they were eliminated. They just got back into town. They had not done all of their evaluations. And so things could change. And I think a lot of people, and I've seen this a lot on Twitter, especially, a lot of people have seized on, they said the coaching staff was all returning and then they fired 2 guys. They clarified that for like the option decisions, the expectation on the coaching staff is that they're all back as of now. The expectation. The plan was to pick up those options, right? As they did their evaluations, they met, they discussed it, they changed their mind. And I actually think that is it frustrating for the fans? Yes. I was trying to tell people, I'm like, stop saying that they picked up the d'Arnaud option. They've said they're going to, but they haven't actually done it yet. And then they didn't. I think it's actually a credit to this front office that they're willing to sit down and look at the data and look at the information and say, hey, we thought this was a good idea. We may have been wrong and we need to change direction. I think it's a good thing rather than just saying we're picking it up on vibes and not checking to see whether or not that was a smart thing to do. So I think it's a good thing.
No, I agree. And I know they're not afraid to eat their own words too, to make the right decision moving forward. No, I absolutely agree. It's just a little comical because that we've seen that some of the decisions that have already happened so far this offseason were some phrases, some conversations that were looked at in a different eye. But no, overall, I do agree that they've made the right decision so far. I'm excited about the new hitting coach. I think the trade for Soler, moving on from Soler, was a good decision.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people don't feel the same way, but I think in big picture of things, once we're all said and done, we see the roster that the Braves have breaking camp in 2025, we're going to realize that Soler didn't have a spot on this roster, and it's going to make a lot of sense moving into the new season. And I do think if those pieces are made, those little small pieces, I'm going to go a little bit farther out on the limb than what you said earlier. I do think that some of these small pieces could make more of a impact than you think, Lindsay. But I do think that in spring training in 2025, when we look at this roster, we're going to once again think that this is a 100-win team.
Yep. World Series or bust is, I think, the correct expectation to have with the talent that you have accumulated. This has been Braves Today for Tuesday, November 5th. If you're listening on audio, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. If you're on audio, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the feed. Also leave a 5-star review. Tell your friends to go check out the Braves Today podcast. And until next time, this has been Braves Today.